तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कल्मषापहं श्रवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि वदन्ति भूरिराजन्. Your words are like nectar, bringing life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. Did I not finish? Week last time. Anyhow, I'm going to start where my bookmark is. It looks like I didn't finish that. This is the chapter, Instruction to Vaishnavas and Brahmos. Huh? Do you remember? Did Swami V do it last time? Where did I stop?
You said it will be a long passage, so you stop there.
Really? Oh. Okay. What page do you have?
216.
Huh?
I think in this book it will stop at 216.
216.
Swami B did 216.
He did that. Oh, okay. Okay. I have November 26, 1883. That's right. Okay. Okay. And then I'll start where the bookmark was. Okay. I'll start in the new date. Sorry, everyone. Okay, it's November 26, 1883. It was the day of the annual festival of the Sinduriyapatti Brahmo Samaj. There were different branches, of the Brahmo Samaj. I don't know too much about that. And very often they met at somebody's house. The ceremony was to be performed in Manilal Mallik's house. The worship hall, does anybody know? Did they have different places where they met? One big hall. I know they had, anyhow. The worship hall was beautifully decorated with flowers, wreaths, and evergreens, and many devotees were assembled, eagerly awaiting the worship. Their enthusiasm had been greatly heightened by the news that Sri Ramakrishna was going to grace the occasion with his presence. Keshav, Vijay, Shivanath, and other leaders of the Brahmo Samaj held him in high respect. Now, we have three different people and three different levels of high respect. They're not all exactly the same. Keshav, and they're all in one sentence. It's interesting because Keshav and Vijay had already split, and they were not really on speaking terms. We remember when they went on the steamer together, and it was embarrassing for them. They both found themselves there. Anyhow, Keshav, of course, had tremendous respect for Sri Ramakrishna. Vijay had more than respect for him. He really was very much influenced, and we'll see that he renounced everything. Shivanath, I have no idea what this story is with him, that Thakur praised him so much. Of course, he said sometimes that he didn't keep his word, he didn't come, but Shivanath didn't seem to really have that same respect for Sri Ramakrishna. He is the one who wrote a few times that he thought that thinking of God too much, he had lost his head, and he was influenced by Keshav. Many of them had these different ideas. Even Trailokyanath, Sanyal, the great singer, who was very much influenced by Sri Ramakrishna, he wrote a book. And there he also said how much Thakur changed after meeting Keshav. Actually, Keshav changed. Thakur, did he change? He adjusted himself. He always adjusted his teachings to those who came to him. Not that he changed, but when he gives instructions to the Brahmos and everything, it'll be something suitable for them. So Keshav, Vijay, Shivanath, and other leaders of the Brahmo Samaj held him in high respect. That means Sri Ramakrishna. His God-intoxicated state of mind, his intense love of spiritual life, his burning faith, his intimate communion with God, and his respect for women, whom he regarded as veritable manifestations of the Divine Mother, together with the unsullied purity of his character, his complete renunciation of worldly talk, his love and respect for all religious faiths, and his eagerness to meet devotees of all creeds attracted the members of the Brahmo Samaj to him. Okay, now this is M's appraisal of the situation. Not all of them were so attracted, and I think there was a little bit of some who accused Sri Ramakrishna of not being so nice to his wife because he renounced the world. So it's not that all of them understood his reverence for the Divine Mother and all women and everything. Some of them, I think, were annoyed when he came. Especially, he would come sometimes and go into samadhi, and that would be the end of the whole program. That he had to turn the lights out one time when he was there. So they were all different, and there was jealousy also. And we see with Majumdar when he went to the United States how much jealousy there was. So it's a very complicated relationship. Thakur was so simple, he didn't have any of these negative feelings towards any of them. But they were very complicated people, very Western educated and modern types of people. Devotees came that day from far off places to join the festival, for it would give them a chance to get a glimpse of the master and listen to his inspiring talk. Sri Ramakrishna arrived at the house before the worship began and became engaged in conversation with Vijay Krishna Goswami and the other devotees. The lamps were lighted and the divine service was about to begin. The master asked if Shivanath would come to the festival. A Brahmo devotee said that he had other important things to do and was not coming. So we get a glimpse. What's more important than seeing Sri Ramakrishna? And this happened several times. That Thakur even went, I think, to his place once. He wasn't there. So, Master, I feel very happy when I see Shivanath. So he was so simple that I don't know, he didn't notice or he didn't care that Shivanath sometimes, he didn't avoid him, but he didn't go out of his way to see him all of the time. And there were some devotees who liked to gossip a little bit. And so he always said, oh, this devotee said this about you, that said that about Ram especially, Ramchandra. But he was above all of that. I feel very happy when I see Shivanath. He always seems to be absorbed in the bliss of bhakti. Further, a man who is respected by so many surely possesses some divine power. Shivanath also became one of the acharyas. That Keshav passed away, of course, and then Vijay Krishna left and everything. I don't know if he was at that time, but he also used to lecture. He's a big fat man, I heard. He's a very large person. He fell off the podium of the platform one time. I read it somewhere, some story about him. So this is Thakur talking. He's about Shivanath, but he has one great defect. He doesn't keep his word. So many times this happened. Once he said to me that he would come to Dakshineswar, but he neither came nor sent me word. That is not good. It is said that truthfulness alone constitutes the spiritual discipline in the Kali Yuga. This was one of Thakur's great teachings that he mentioned so many different times. This truthfulness, if one can cling to truthfulness for 12 years, many times he would use that. 12 years is considered one yuga. I don't know how they come up with that idea, but if they can do that, you can realize God. It is said that truthfulness alone constitutes the spiritual discipline of the Kali Yuga. If a man clings tenaciously to truth, he ultimately realizes God. Without this regard for truth, one gradually loses everything. Now, is it just an ethical teaching? Is it what's the real meaning behind this, behind truthfulness? These are things that really require a little bit of deep thought. That when we feel that tendency not to tell the truth, what is it based on? What is it based on? There's something behind it. I'll tell you a nice story. I think I heard it from Swami Gautamanandaji, but I may be wrong. I think it was one of our Swamis who worked with tribal boys. It was a very nice story. He was telling us that one day he thought that he would give these boys ethical teaching about telling the truth. So he said, "You always tell the truth." The boys are looking at him. He said, "Never tell a lie." And they're looking at each other. Then one of them says, "What's a lie?" And he said, "A lie? Well, if something happens and you say it didn't happen or something like that," and they said, "Why would we say it didn't happen if it happened?" And they didn't get the it dawned on him that why am I telling these boys? They don't have that concept of what it means to tell a lie. They're so simple. So we have to ask ourselves, what is it that compels us sometimes to want to hide the truth, or at least not be fully open? Anybody? Huh? Self-interest. There's some ego behind it, some self-interest. Either we have something to gain, or we want to project an image of ourselves. We're thinking in terms of how would it appear to other people if I divulge this fact or something. What would they think of me? So it all goes back to ego and false identification. So it's not just an ethical teaching that one should always tell the truth. That we ourselves feel it. The moment we start to say something that is not 100% true, or it may be true, but we're not giving the full story or the way we present it, most of us, we feel it. We know that inside that we're not really being 100% truthful. And then what is it? Does it mean to be really truthful? I think about this sometimes. That if we're talking about the real nature of the self, then anytime I say something like I'm hungry, I'm tired, you hurt me, this and that, it's not a truthful statement. Of course, we can't go that far. But truthfulness really means living in accordance with the higher truth. Somehow, not just how events take place or anything. A lot of it goes back to what is the real nature of the self? Who am I really? And this ego idea of what do I want people to think of me? I want everyone to think I'm a good person, I'm a nice person, I'm an intelligent person, I'm a caring person, all of these things. And so I speak in such a way that will give that impression. It may not be a lie, but there may not be the sincerity behind it. So this truthfulness is a very deep subject. What does it mean to be really truthful?
Because sometimes you have to lie out of kindness.
Yeah, now that's a different story. This when are we permitted to tell a falsehood? Yeah, if it's to save somebody else's life, if it's out of kindness, these are different things. But when we trace it back to our own self, yeah, that's what I'm thinking of more. Yeah, of course, we have our rules about telling the truth, that it has to be priya and it has to be hita. It has to be a pleasant truth, never speak an unpleasant truth, and it has to be beneficial somehow. So they say, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Before we say anything, we should have that test. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? See, we may say things that are true, but they're not kind. We may say things that are true and kind, but not necessary. And we say, well, why did I say it? Most of the time, we say things that aren't necessary. Why did I say it? I wanted the other person to know, to give an impression. See, we have no way of letting people know uh, who we are on the inside except through speech, the things that we say. This is the way we can say, look, this is me, this is who I am, through our speech, through our actions a little bit, but mostly through our speech. Swami Turiyananda made a statement once about Swamiji that he never heard him use the word I without feeling that deep down he had the sense of Atman. Even he says, I'm hungry. Now, normally we say that means I'm completely identified with the self. But he got that sense with Swamiji that it was I for him always meant the self, the Atman, that way. So, anyhow, these are things that require a lot of reflection and deep thought. Why do we say the things that we say? And why such an urge to talk so much. There's some people, I'm not going to mention anybody, and nobody should take offense, but they constantly talk. And you wonder why. What are they? Is it to communicate something? Is it just to say something about themselves? So it's good to reflect on these things. It's nice to keep conversation. It's not that everything has to be deep and high level and everything. Sometimes just out of camaraderie, we like to talk and chat with other people. That's fine. But we should it's good to observe what is this tendency, what is the motive behind the things that we say, and is there something deeper to this than simply, yes, I don't want to tell a lie. So anyhow, Thakur, he leaves that one to us. He doesn't say too much about it, except for this truthfulness, that mon mokak, that we have to, what we're feeling inside and what we're saying should be the same. But to look at this motive is very interesting. Indranil.
Sometimes it happens, like in this case, he did not come.
Yeah.
So, like I say, okay, I'll go, and I cannot come, or I cannot go there. How it will happen?
Yeah, sometimes now this is really about keeping one's word, making a promise that we can't keep. Sometimes we simply can't. So it's good to say I'll try, I'll do my best, something like that. That sometimes we shouldn't be so bold to say yes, I'll definitely come. So we have a lot of people that they'll say, yeah, if it's Thakur's will, I'll do it. You remember the story with Girish, that Thakur had told him, you give your power of attorney to me or to God. It was kind of half and half with that story. One day he said, now I'll go to the theater. There's some work to do. And he said, no, you can't simply say that it's because you want to do it, that you'll do it. If his mother's will, you'll go. Something like that. So, yeah, we forgive people if they say they'll do something and something comes up that was unplanned and unforeseen. We forgive them. That's not such a terrible thing. This other thing is more psychological. I'm not talking so much about, if we say we'll do something, we can't do it, something comes up. But what is the motive for our speech? It's an interesting subject.
Swamiji, in terms of not speaking the unpleasant truth.
Yes.
So in terms of like telling your kids something that nobody else would tell them, something that you think that they can improve upon, but they would like to hear that.
Yeah.
So how do you?
Yeah, no, there's something called tough love. Huh? Have you heard that expression? Tough love. You can even punish someone very severely out of love if it's what they need. Yeah. So yeah, with children, sometimes we have to be brutally honest with them. Even other people, husband, wife, sometimes, if we see they've really veered off, that they're losing, becoming, they've lost track of the real ideal in life, whatever it is, some very strong things. Sometimes we have to be really honest and say, this may hurt your feelings, but I'm doing it for your best. They'll understand. If we're not doing it to hurt anybody, we're doing it to help. So we can, of course, then we can do something like that. Sometimes the truth is unpleasant. So, but when it says don't tell an unpleasant truth, it means don't go out of your way to tell somebody doesn't look good someday. Don't go up to them and say that that's an ugly dress you're wearing. Your hair looks awful. There's no point in that. But if it's something like, I've noticed that you've been hanging out with bad company and your grades are going down and you're going to get yourself in a lot of trouble. It may be a little hurtful, but we have to do it that time. Yeah. It's a complicated question. When we can do things, when we can't do things. I remember one of the letters of Swami Parameshanandaji. He was talking that at one time during the riots, communal riots, there's a gang came to the house of this family. Little girl was there, and they wanted her sister. They said, "Is your sister at home?" They were going to brutalize her and everything. So she said, no, she went to the village house. So then they left. The sister was really there. So Swami Parameshanandaji said, I bless that that lying little girl, something like that. I bless her for her courage and bravery to do it. So there are times when we can't tell lies, of course, if it comes to that.
May I ask another question?
Yeah.
So sometimes this thing comes to the mind when Krishnji had asked Yudhishthir to say Ashwatthama died to
Yeah. Everybody wonders about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So sometimes when we have tendency to lie, we take, hide behind that even Krishnji made Yudhishthir.
Yeah, no, we Thakur would say, Krishna did so many good things. Why do you only look at that one thing? Yeah.
No, but we want to
I know.
some kind of comfort that it's okay to sometimes do that because he did that.
Yeah. No, it's okay to sometimes have failings, but we shouldn't look upon that as an ideal. There's one of the funny incidents in his life that a little bit of cleverness was there. It's like we see a great soul, he'll cross his fingers, and so it won't count as a liar. So that doesn't mean we should do it. Yeah. They won't really be great souls, of course. But yeah, everyone points to that one incident. Yeah.
But it comes to the mind so often, like whenever you're going to do something
like
that.
No, don't let it come to your mind.
Okay.
Yeah. No, think of the good things and let that be the ideal. Yeah. Remember, these things were written by people. Yeah. We don't know if these incidents happened or didn't happen, and whoever the author of this particular incident was, whether they thought very deeply about it or not, we don't know all these things. These are all legendary things and stories that come about and everything. How much is true, how much was made up, is impossible for us to say. So we take all the positive things. This is why Thakur said the scriptures are a combination of sugar and sand. There'll be things that we don't have to throw out, but we leave behind. We take the sugar. The other stuff we don't bother about. So sometimes even in scriptures we have to pick and choose that way.
We also Thakur said, even an avatar takes a human birth. He behaves like human, talks like human, suffers like human. So sometimes we may not know what was the reason behind what he did and why he did.
That's true. Yeah. We don't know if it really served a higher purpose or anything, but it sounds too clever to us when we read it. Yeah. Without this regard for truth, one gradually loses everything. If by chance I say that I will go to the pine grove, I must go there even if there's no further need of it. You all know what the pine grove is. Yeah. That's where he went to answer the calls of nature. So he felt the urge. And then he got up and started walking, saying, no, maybe a little gas or something. I really don't have to go. And so then what does he do? He said, I must go there, even if there's no further need of it, lest I lose my attachment to truth. Now, we should remember also that a little bit later, Thakur will say, I think later, will say that this fanatical attachment to truth has lessened a little bit nowadays. So he recognized that a little bit is by, like Shuchibai, there's the same thing, a little bit of a fanatical attachment to truth. It was just too much. That there's so many stories that one time he said he would go to Jadu Malik's house that day and then he forgot. So he found it just before it was too late. It was midnight or something, but he wanted to go there and stick his foot just inside the property and call out, I've come, and then go back home so that he would feel that he kept the truth. He did these things so that we would do it to a certain extent. He did it 100%, so we would do it a little bit. This was the way he did everything. We can't try to do things the way he did, but he said the highest ideal so that we can aspire to it to a certain extent. And everything was literal with him. So even like touching money, things like that. Everything was very graphic and literal and tangible in his life. After my vision of the Divine Mother, I prayed to her, taking a flower in my hands. Mother, here is thy knowledge and here is thy ignorance. Take them both and give me only pure love. Here is thy holiness and here is thy unholiness. Take them both, Mother, and give me pure love. Here is thy good and here is thy evil. Take them both, Mother, and give me pure love. Here's thy righteousness, and here's thy unrighteousness. Take them both, mother, and give me pure love. I mentioned all these, but I could not say, Mother, here is thy truth, and here is thy falsehood. Take them both. I gave up everything at her feet, but could not bring myself to give up truth. Because if he gave that up, then everything else would be a lie. If he gave up truth, then when he says, Mother, I care for you alone, then there's nothing behind it. There's no, it doesn't have to correspond to any feeling or anything like that. So that was the one thing that he couldn't give up. Soon the service began according to the rules of the Brahmos Samaj. They had something that was a little bit like in church service, that there would be some reading, some sermon. They would do some prayers, common prayers. The acharya would stand up. They had their own kind of prayer book kind of thing and song book and everything, sing together. The preacher was seated on the dais. After the opening prayer, he recited holy text of the Vedas and was joined by the congregation in the invocation to the Supreme Brahman. They chanted in chorus, Brahman is truth, knowledge, and infinity. The beginning of the Brahmo Samaj, we can trace it back really to Ram Mohan Roy, I believe. And he wanted to introduce the study of the Upanishads in Bengal. He was the first one to translate the Upanishads into Bengali. I think Katha Upanishad was the first one. You know our Prabhupada Prana, that was her master's thesis, his translation of the Katha Upanishad into Bengali. And so when Devendranath Tagore came, it was all really based on the Upanishad, which is all formless aspect of God, but with gunas. So saguna, nirakar saguna. This was the way that they liked to worship. So this element was there, a little bit of some Vedic chanting and everything, but really some teachings from the Upanishads. So not too much, in fact, nothing with these gods and goddesses and puja and worship and certainly no image worship. They were really dead against it.
Was he a spiritual person or a social reformer?
Who?
Raja Rammohn Roy.
I think he was a deeply spiritual person as well. I don't know that much about him. Apurva?
No, he's both.
Both, yeah. I think he was a very good person. Swamiji wrote something about him, that highly praising him and giving him credit for kind of the Renaissance in Bengal. Yeah. So he was a very good person. I don't know if God realized or anything like that. Don't know anything about that, but
It was like Vidyashankar.
yeah, but Vidyasagar was a little bit of an agnostic, a little bit, but otherwise, yeah, he was also a social reformer. That was a big part of it, yeah. But he really wanted to bring this study of the Upanishads to bring that back. A very important thing. They say that Max Mueller brought the Vedas to India. He presented the gift he gave to them. So there's Ram Mohan Roy, a little bit the Upanishads was a gift he gave to Bengal that way. So that it was part of that revival and everything. Yeah. Anyhow, Swamiji praised him very much. I know that. They chanted in chorus, Brahman is truth, knowledge, and infinity. It shines as bliss and immortality. Brahman is peace, blessedness, the one without a second. It is pure and unstained by sin. The minds of the devotees were stilled, and they closed their eyes in meditation. They say that one of the gifts that Thakur gave to the Brahmo Samaj was calling on God as mother. And we see many of the songs that Trailokanath especially composed after that were addressed to the Divine Mother. Amai Deyama Bhagavad, the famous song that we see over and over again, "Oh Mother, make me mad with thy love." That was written by Trailokya Sanyal, the main songwriter. Of course, later main songwriter was Tagore himself, but in those days. And through his contact with Sri Ramakrishna. The master went into deep samadhi. He sat there transfixed and speechless. After some time, he opened his eyes, looked around, and suddenly stood up with the words, Brahma, Brahma, on his lips. He was put into that state through the prayers about the Supreme Brahman. So naturally, when he comes down, that's what comes into his mind again. This is very typical with Thakur. Soon the devotional music began, accompanied by drums and cymbals. In a state of divine fervor, the master began to dance with the devotees. This is something that probably they never did before he came. The dancing and everything, I don't think that was part of their agenda in the early days. He had a big effect on them. Oh, today's holy, everyone. Yeah. So day of great joy and kirtan, singing and dancing and everything. The birthday of Chaitanya Deva also. So in a state of divine fervor, the master began to dance with the devotees. Vijay and the other Brahmos danced around him. The guest, it was very common that Thakur would stand up and the others would form a circle and do kirtan going in a circle around him, and he would just be dancing like somehow. We just have to use our imagination with that. Actually, some of these dramatic performances, these series that they've done with the life of Thakur and everything in the past 10 years, something like that, they were very helpful for me. I got a good picture of what it might look like for him to be dancing that way and others. So there's some value to some of these dramatic presentations. The guests and the devotees were enchanted. Many of them drank the sweet bliss of God's name and forgot the world. The happiness of the material world appeared bitter to them, at least for the time being. After the kirtan, all sat around the master, eager to hear his words. Master, it is difficult to lead the life of a householder in a spirit of detachment. Once Pratap said to me, this is Pratap Chandra Majumdar, a celebrated leader of the Brahmo Samaj. That's all that it's said here. But we know he also went to the United States when Swamiji was there. And we read in some of the letters, this poor Majumdar, how he was just consumed by jealousy and spread rumors and things about Swamiji. How he could do it is very hard to understand. That he was a cheat and he was really an actor. That now it's true he was an actor because they used to put on plays in the Brahmo Samaj, but he wasn't an actor as a sannyasi, and that he was a lawyer. He studied law, the people are thinking, oh, he's a clever lawyer and he's an actor and he's pretending to be a sadhu to raise money. And even about his life, mixing with women and everything, he spread all sorts of rumors. And Swamiji was so kind. All he said was, poor Majumdar, consumed by jealousy. Swamiji really, it was amazing how he could lose his temper, but he couldn't get angry at people. There's a difference there. Yeah, there was, I think, Swami Subodhanandaji. He said that he never saw Swamiji get angry. Now, how can we imagine that? He yelled and screamed, lost his temper so many times, but it wasn't real anger. The temper, slight temper and everything, but Swamiji, because he was free from pride, such a proud person, but free from pride. The one story that I always remember is he was somewhere, probably in Gujarat, and conversing with the pundits there in Sanskrit. Swamiji wasn't a Sanskrit pundit. He learned it and he studied it. But these are people who, from their childhood, they were the absolute masters of it. They could on the spot recite, compose poetry and everything, perfect verse and everything. They were absolute masters. And Swamiji, he studied it with his brilliant mind. He probably picked it up faster than anybody could. But still, he would make some mistakes. And they would laugh at him. And he would laugh along with them. Now, anybody else, they would be so offended. How dare you laugh at me and everything. Swamiji was different. So he said, once Pratap said to me, now Pratap, another strange case, because he was one of the early ones to write something on Thakur, which brought the attention of the people of Calcutta to him. It was, and one of the early things was written in that what is it called? Sulabh Samachar, the periodical or newspaper that the Brahmo Samaj put out. So at one time he had some high regard for Sri Ramakrishna. We don't know what happened to him, the jealousy. We hear that after Thakur passed away, that they came up to Swamiji and they tried to cut a deal with him so that they would let him be the main acharya or something for the Brahmo Samaj. And he turned them down, of course. He had his own mission and everything to do. So there was probably a little bit of bad feelings because of that also. So once Pratap said to me, "Sir, we follow the example of King Janaka. He led the life of a householder and a detached spirit. We shall follow him." This is another thing. Everybody points to Janaka. Yeah, why renounce the world? That God can be realized as a householder. Janaka did it. So we read in the Gita, Janaka Adi, Janaka and others. How many others? I think Shankaracharya lists 2 or 3 other names or something. It's not so easy. It's not so easy to realize God after renouncing the world. So anyhow, they all point to this Janaka. Follow him. I said to him, can one be like King Janaka by merely wishing it? How many austerities he practiced in order to acquire divine knowledge. He practiced the most intense form of asceticism for many years, and only then returned to the life of the world. Is there then no hope for householders? Certainly there is. This is a case where Thakur really embodies the teachings of the Gita. The Gita says everybody can all. When Gita specifically mentions women and outcasts, and everything, it mentions that not because they're lower class, but because they were excluded. There's a adhikara. Rather, they were excluded from that and were given no chance for liberation or God realization. So the Gita was really a radical change, kind of revolutionary type of thing. And Thakur was all of these great, we can say devotional teachers. He was really a bhakti, one of the avatars, that they didn't care for any of this caste distinction or householder sannyasi distinction. Of course, Thakur had special regard for sannyasa, we know, but he never said that the householders can't realize God. So is there then no hope for householders? Certainly there is. They must practice spiritual discipline in solitude for some days. So he said, basically, that don't think that this mental renunciation is such a simple thing. You have to be prepared for it, prepare the mind for it, and you have to do some spiritual practice and everything. Then you'll really be able to do it, because mental renunciation is the most important thing for everybody. Even for the sannyasi, it's the most important thing. So the difference with the sannyasi, there's external and internal both. But everyone, internal is the main thing. There's non-attachment and surrender, all of these qualities. Everybody can do that. But the sannyasi has the the advantage of environment and time and everything to do spiritual practice. The householder has to find time for all of these things. So we always talked about solitude, going into solitude. This gives an opportunity to remove ourselves from the worldly environment and to devote ourselves with more intensity to spiritual practice. And I have my own theory about this solitude, to be able to live without any thought of how we appear to other people. We live alone for a long time. We start to feel ourselves as consciousness itself. We live with people. There's always some little bit of awareness that you're looking at me, you're looking at my body. Huh? How can I say you're looking at me? You're looking at my body. And there's some inference going on. You're listening to my words that you're looking at a person, of course, not just a physical form. But this is the only way you can see me as this physical form. And that affects everything that we do. That the way we dress, we get up in the morning. What do we think about what we're going to wear if no one is going to see us that day? We may stay in our pajamas the whole day long. What do we care? Huh? Otherwise, we realize we do things because of what other people will think, which is good. I mean, we have to have some consideration for other people, but it also means that we're not giving ourselves that opportunity to just feel that I'm just pure awareness, pure consciousness, which I can do in solitude. It's a very nice thing. Yeah.
During COVID, did the whole world experience some sort of solitude?
Yeah, this was a good test, because there are people who can't bear solitude. And these are people whose mind is so outgoing that they have no interior type of life. So we find some people that they saw it as a very nice period that they could spend time with themselves. And there were other people who just got so terribly bored and lonely and everything. So it's a good test. Of course, we all get a little, we all miss, holy company. I mean, that's one thing, but not everyone benefits from it. It takes a good understanding and a little bit of spiritual growth to be able to really appreciate it and enjoy solitude. Swamiji once went to some place in northern France, I believe, and was shown these ancient dungeons that were single cell. People would go there, and it looked horrible and everything. And what was Swamiji's reaction? Ah, what a wonderful place for meditation. He could go into a cave and live alone. He would have been perfectly happy. Most people can't do that. It takes a high level of spiritual growth, or at least understanding of who we are and what we want to do. There's a stage in spiritual life, and we read this the other day, that Thakur said nowadays Rakal doesn't even like my company. Was it Thakur who said it? Somebody said it. Yeah. There's a stage in spiritual life where people just want to be alone. Alone. The aloneness is being one with God. That alone is that expression, I think, from the cloud of unknowing. That spiritual life is a flight from the unknown to the unknown. Something like that. Yeah. And this Kaivalya, this is the definition of the highest spiritual experience in the Sankhya school, aloneness. But that aloneness means that we're one with that divinity within ourselves. So, yeah, we can really feel when we're with other people, the mind is just pulled outward. When we're alone, we can feel that divine presence. We can just breathe a sigh of relief that we're safe. We're alone. We don't have to deal with other people. It sounds a little bit reclusive, but at a certain period in life, it's important, and Thakur emphasizes it very much. Whether it's for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or a couple of months, doesn't matter. He said even a little bit. And so when we're alone, we should try to take advantage of it and reflect deeply. Who am I? And who am I in this situation where there's nobody else to see me? There's no one else to make me feel that I'm one with this. I have this theory, some of you have heard it before, that when we talk about false identification with the body, it's through the eyes of the other person. If there were nobody else around, we would have very little identification with the body. If we didn't have mirrors to look at, and how do we identify ourselves? Another one of my funny theories. Our sense of identification is in our hands. Unless we're constantly looking in a mirror, this is the thing that we look at mostly. The thing that's different with everybody. This is, we can identify with that. Yeah, this is me. I recognize these hands, especially the funny hand. So other than that, we don't see the whole person. It's through the other person sees us this way, and we know that, and we become identified that way. Objectification, the gaze of the other, objectifies us. The existentialists talked about these things a lot, Sartre and others. Yeah, the gaze, how it turns us into an object. And if we're free from that, we live in solitude, then we can start feeling ourselves as the subject and not the object. It's a subtle point, but it's very important. We can feel it. It's subtle. We can feel it very tangibly if we live in solitude for a while. So they must practice spiritual discipline in solitude for some days. Thus, he talked about householders. They will acquire knowledge and devotion. The sadhus, of course. Of course, it goes with, not that sadhus don't need a solitude. We also need that. Thus, they will acquire knowledge and devotion. Then it will not hurt them to lead the life of the world. But when you practice discipline and solitude, keep yourself entirely away from your family. You must not allow your wife, son, daughter, we can add husband, mother, father, sister, brother, friends, or relatives near you. So real solitude. While thus practicing discipline and solitude, you should think, I have no one else in the world. God is my all. You must also pray to him with tears in your eyes for knowledge and devotion. Now, later in this chapter, we get that song. Remember this, O mind, nobody is your own. It's a very beautiful song. And sometimes we wonder that why do we say that? We have no one to call our very own but God. What did Holy Mother say? No one is a stranger, everyone is your own. So is that contradicting this, or is one higher, one lower? We have to understand that the different attitudes at different times, different things are helpful at different times, that if we want to learn to have reliance on God, then we have to understand that that's our anchor. That's the one thing to really hold on to. Everything else, no matter how wonderful somebody is, they can go at any time. We can lose them. We see husband and wife, sometimes something happens and they love each other one day, the next day they can't look at each other, and the next thing you know that they're yelling and screaming at each other and suing for divorce. And then what do they say? I thought I knew you, I didn't know you. We think we know somebody when they're nice to us and loving, and then something happens we don't know. So this we have this baby dakmon. Think very deeply, mind. Think about that. This song reflects exactly the meaning of our Bhaja Govindam. The Bhaja Govindam is such a beautiful Sanskrit hymn. It's really not a hymn to Govinda. It sounds like it, but it's all about this idea of there's nobody to call your own. That this is renunciation and transitory nature of everything. And God alone is that pillar to hold on to. So we can feel these things in solitude. It's true. So while thus practicing discipline and solitude, you should say, I have no one else in the world. God is my all. You must also pray to him with tears in your eyes for knowledge and devotion. If you ask me how long you should live in solitude, away from your family, I should say that it would be good for you if you could spend even one day in such a manner. One day can be a long time. I was in Mayavati once, and it was right after my sannyas, and there's a little hut outside that Swami Swarupananda used to stay in. He'd spend the whole day in meditation and everything. And I thought they suggested it. Why not go spend a day in that little hut? That was the longest day of my life. I'm used to solitude, but I would read a little bit, do other things. I could cook my meal. They're sitting there in the tiny room with nothing there. And it's not so simple. It's not so easy sometimes. So even one day, but solitude doesn't mean we don't do anything. We bring books with us. We have a routine. We can do some chanting, this and that. Just there are no other people there to switch our gaze from inside out to outside in. This is the main thing with solitude that I've come to understand. So it would be good for you if you could spend even one day in such a manner. 3 days at a time are still better. One may live in solitude for 12 days, a month, 3 months, or a year, according to one's convenience and ability. One hasn't much to fear if one leads the life of a householder after attaining knowledge and devotion. The Thakur sometimes says, first realize God, then live in the world. It's too high. We have to go back to this. Sometimes he says, live in the world after attaining devotion. Here he says, after attaining knowledge and devotion. If you break a jackfruit after rubbing your hands with oil, then its sticky milk will not smear your hands. While playing the game of hide and seek, you are safe if you but once touch the granny. be turned into gold by touching the philosopher's stone. After that, you may remain buried underground 1,000 years. When you are taken out, you will still be gold. This idea of feeling safe, it's a very tangible feeling that we've reached a point where, I mean, we shouldn't be proud and think there's no chance of a fall, but we reach a stage where we feel that, yeah, now I know what I want out of life, that we reach a point where we really feel that we're on safe ground if we don't let go. Of course, if we don't let go. And as I say, the minute we have pride that nothing can touch me now, then we're in trouble. But we can feel that now I found the golden life. I found the path. I know exactly what I want, that I won't be tempted to do anything else. Nothing can sway me. We feel safe. It's a nice term to use, really. I like this idea. We feel some type of safety at that stage. The mind is like milk. If you keep the mind in the world, which is like water, then the milk and water will get mixed. That is why people keep milk in a quiet place and let it set into curd. That's the solitude. Then churn the butter from it. That's our sadhana. Of course, we do them together. Likewise, through spiritual discipline practiced in solitude, churn the butter of knowledge and devotion from the milk of the mind. Then that butter can easily be kept in the water of the world. It will not get mixed with the world. The mind will float detached on the water of the world. Our problem is that the mind is too easily stained by the world, and we're too easily influenced by the company of other people, ideas of other people. This is why holy company is so important. And reading holy books, reading this gospel, reading and everything, these are so important. Vijay had just returned from Gaya. This is our Vijay Krishna Goswami, that he finally decided to become a monk. It was a desire of his, we don't know how much earlier, but so he says, Vijay had just returned from Gaya, where he had spent a long time in solitude and holy company. He had put on the ochre robe of a monk and was in an exalted state of mind, always indrawn. He was sitting before the master with his head bent down as if absorbed in some deep thought. Thakur was spoke very highly of the spiritual state of Vijay and his tremendous love for God. And he used to say he was a Goswami. A Goswami, that means that they had some direct connection to the Chaitanya lineage, to Advaita Goswami or one of the others. And he felt that this devotion was so much a part of his nature that it had to come out. It was being stifled in the Brahmo Samaj. And it finally did. I always find it curious. I don't know what the Brahmos thought of him showing up as a sannyasi. They had no tradition of sannyasa in the Brahmo Samaj. They must have had some respect for it, but it must have seemed odd also. And then eventually he left. He had many of his own disciples. I don't know that much about his life, but I know that big books were written about him and everything. He became considered a great Vaishnava saint. So he had put on the ochre robe of a monk and was in an exalted state of mind, always indrawn. He was sitting before the master with head bent down, as if absorbed in some deep thought. Casting his benign gaze on Vijay, the master said, Vijay, have you found your room? Let me tell you a parable. Once, two holy men, in the course of their wanderings, entered a city. One of them, with wondering eyes and mouth agape, was looking at the marketplace, the stalls, and the buildings when he met his companion. The latter said, You seem to be filled with wonder at the city. Where's your baggage? He replied, First of all, I found a room. I put my things in it, locked the door, and felt totally relieved. Now I am going about the city, enjoying all the fun. So I'm asking you, Vijay, if you have found your room. So again, this feeling, have you reached that point where you're safe? You have your spiritual ideal. You know what you want out of life, and it's locked in a box. There's no way that anybody can get it. There's no chance of falling from that ideal. Yeah, or small chance or something. Have you reached that stage? And then you can feel free. You can go about. You can mix with other people. See, this is that distinction that we think we'll go and we'll help other people, and it turns out they drag us down. They have a greater power to drag us down than we have of pulling them up. In our pride, we think we can do that. But those who have reached that state, they're not affected by any of these things. I've mentioned many, many times that Swamiji's great statement. I like it so much, I'll mention it again. When I was young, I wouldn't walk on the same side of the street that the theater was on. Now I can live in the house of a prostitute, and my mind won't be disturbed in the slightest. So that's the difference. We have to know how easily we're affected by other people and circumstances, environment, and everything. And have we reached that point where we're more or less safe, that we won't mix with other people and feel that temptation? Yeah, they're enjoying the world. What am I doing? We won't feel that. So then we know we're a little bit safe at that point. So I'm asking you, Vijay, if you have found your room, to M and the others. You see the spring in Vijay's heart has been covered all these days. Now it is open. So it was stifled in the Brahmo Samaj. It was a little bit stifled there because they didn't care too much for all of this open display of emotion and everything that is a part of this devotional tradition. To Vijay, well, Shivanath is always in trouble and turmoil. He has to write for magazines and perform many other duties. Worldly duties bring much worry and anxiety along with them. It is narrated in the Bhagavata that the Avadhuta had 24 gurus, one of whom was a kite. In a certain place, kite is like a big eagle. It's a big eagle, but it's an aquatic bird that flies in the ocean and catches fish. In a certain place, the fishermen were catching fish. A kite swooped down and snatched the fish. At the sight of the fish, about 1,000 crows chased the kite and made a great noise with their cawing. Whichever way the kite flew with the fish, the crows followed it. The kite flew to the south, and the crows followed it there. The kite flew to the north, and still the crows followed after it. The kite went east and west, but with the same result. As the kite began to fly about in confusion, lo, the fish dropped from its mouth. The crows at once let the kite alone and flew after the fish. Thus relieved of its worries, the kite sat on the branch of a tree and thought, that wretched fish was at the root of all my troubles. I have now got rid of it, and therefore I am at peace. The Avadhut learned this lesson from the kite, that as long as a man has the fish, that is worldly desires, he must perform actions and consequently suffer from worry, anxiety, and restlessness. No sooner does he renounce these desires than his activities fall away and he enjoys peace of soul. One of my favorite little phrases from Gita is in chapter 12, Tyagat Shantir Anantaram. We let go of something, peace comes instantly. Anantaram. There's not a gap, not that, well, the next day we'll feel it, the very second. As soon as the fish drops, then worries just disappeared. So this is partly for the sannyasi, these things. Householders can't give up their responsibilities and obligation, but some of these desires and things can be done. And this idea that I'm doing anything, we do everything just as an offering. This is also the tremendous peace of mind if we can practice this letting go and surrender and acceptance. These three things: letting go, surrender, acceptance. Whatever happens, we take as Mother's will. That's all. Okay, let me stop here then. This is page 314. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanudhambhatudvikraham Vai Ishavataram Paramesham Hidayam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasa Namam. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.